Hi, so I wanted to do a video just to give you an overview of the new Fluid Engine editor in Squarespace. I'm sure you've already, if you're a Squarespace user or a previous client of mine, you'll have received emails from Squarespace about this new editor that they rolled out about a month ago now on all new Squarespace websites and for any existing websites using Squarespace 7.0. Now, before I get started, if you don't know if you're using I beg your pardon, 7.1. All websites using Squarespace 7.1. Now, if you don't know if you're on Squarespace 7.1 or 7.0, basically, I think it's safe to say if your website has been built in, I would say, the past 2 years, there's a very good chance it's on 7.1, as it's about 2 years since they launched that. And any websites prior to that are on 7.0. So, for example, my own website is still on Squarespace 7.0. I've not upgraded yet to 7.1. But the easiest way to know which version you're using is when you're in your editing mode. If you go to the Design tab, and if it looks like this, and you have this Site Styles button that opens this menu over here with this. If this looks familiar in your site styles, then you're on 7.1. If it doesn't look familiar, if you're used to managing your styles in a menu over here on the left-hand side, then you're in 7.0. That's kind of the quickest way, I think, to explain the difference. Or if your page has sections. So if I go into this page, for example, if your page has different sections like this and you can edit the section, then you're in the newer version, that's 7.1. If you don't have page sections like this that can be edited independently of the other sections, then you're still on 7.0. Now it's okay to be still on 7.0, but all the upgrades and a lot of the new features and functionalities that Squarespace is rolling out, and they're rolling out a lot all the time at the moment. They've really increased the rate at which they're bringing out new functionalities. All of that obviously is being built on the new platform, which is 7.1. So as I said, I'm still on 7.0 because there's no quick way of upgrading to 7.1. There is an app. Yes, there is a plugin out there that can help with the move over, but basically you're building a new site. So I just haven't had the time yet to rebuild my site on 7.1, so I'm still on 7.0, and it's fine for adding blogs and so on. There's no particular need for me to upgrade. However, I am building all my new sites now for the past couple of years on 7.1 so that my clients have the most up-to-date version. So what I want to talk to you today about is Fluid Engine, which is this new editor that Squarespace have brought out for all brand new websites and all existing 7.1 websites. So if you have an existing website in 7.1, you don't have, well, you have the option to start working using Fluid Engine. And the way you'll know that is if I take this page here, which is just a test page, obviously on a test website. So this is the classic editor. So that's what we've been using on 7.1 websites up until about 3 weeks ago. And if I go in to edit the page, you'll see that, I have my blocks, I have my button. This is the next page section where I have a black background, I have a text block, and all of that is very familiar. This is an image block with the card layout. So you might be familiar with this, or you can have, overlap, you can have different layouts and so on. This is our typical, what they call classic editor. Now you'll see that as I'm moving around the page, I have these little buttons over here, which are prompting me to upgrade. And that's the upgrade to Fluid Engine. So if I want to start editing this page section or this page using the new Fluid Engine, I would click on the upgrade button. I'll show you now in a second what happens when I do that. So I mean, technically you can leave certain sections using the classic editor and not, if you're not editing that section of your page, well, then you don't need to do anything. But if you are editing a page section, you can stay using your classic editor, but as I said, and adding blocks the way you always do. If you want to add an image block, and then you might add, two spacer blocks, if you wanted to make that image a bit smaller. So here's my two spacer blocks, and I'm going to put my image in there to make it a bit smaller. All of this is using the classic editor that you will be familiar with. Now I want to show you what happens if you decide to upgrade. So the new Fluid Engine, basically, as you know, at the moment with the classic editor, when I move anything around the page, all the other blocks on the page are affected. So when I move this image down here beside the text, well, then the text moves over to the right, which was one of the really nice sort of guardrails of Squarespace to date, is that when you make a change, well, you see the change instantaneously, and you can see how other content on your page is impacted by how you move things around. So I'm moving all these blocks around, and I have to rejig things, maybe get rid of this spacer if I want to. But my point is that as I make those changes, everything else on the page or in that page section is affected, and you can see the impact that it has. If I upgrade this particular section here, let me just make it another color. If I upgrade this section here, this pink section, to the Fluid Engine, I want to show you what happens. So I'm going to click on upgrade. And so now I still have my text block and I still have my image block. But if I click on G, you will see that I now have a grid. So I can move my text around the page, and I can move my image around the page. But as I move it, like if I move my image here, and I haven't actually put an image in there. Let me put an image in there. Not me, obviously. Let's use that. So if I put my image on the page like this, sorry, it's just loading. There it is. As I move it around, my text over here on the right hand side, it doesn't change. It stays where it is. So that's the sort of main difference, is that not all your content moves on the page when you move something else around. So in fact, what you have now is complete freedom with your canvas to put things where you want them. Another new feature is, as you can see now, as I click on this image block, if I put my cursor over the corner, I can click and drag to make that bigger. So that's a new way of reorganizing your images. It's more like Canva or a lot of other online tools that you'll all be familiar with. So you can click and drag, move things around as you will, which is pretty cool. And the ability to overlap is also pretty cool. Now, in this instance, that's not a great overlap because the text doesn't really look great. So what you can do now, you'll see here with my text block, I have these little, I have these new options for my text block in the editor. But one of the options is to put a background behind my text. So if you're doing overlap like this, obviously this background is very helpful. Previously, we would have had to code that or use perhaps an image block with the collage layout. So those image block layouts that I referred to earlier, such as this one, which is it's an image block with the card layout. If I upgrade this section now, that goes. There are no more image layouts in the same way that you have in the classic editor. Now you just have the image, and then your text or any kind of overlay or specific layout that you want to do, you just click and drag it around the page. So, to a certain extent, and if I want to add another button, I get this add block prompt now in Fluid Engine. So if I click on that and say, well, yes, I'd like to add a button. If I just click on button, it'll just add my button up here in the top right hand corner, and then I can move it around. So I can put it wherever I want, or I can put it here. I can do an overlap like this, which is kind of nice, or I can put it down here. Just delete that button. Or if I click add block, and if I go to my button and I just click and drag it, it'll put it straight away where I want it. So that's just a little tip. So as I say, you can put this button wherever you want. So you can basically build your page as you wish. Now, this gives us great flexibility as designers, but I must say that I'm a little bit worried for those who are maybe not so proficient in design, because the ability to make a complete mess of your web page is now much easier to do. Let's put it that way. You can see I have complete flexibility with size and shape of my text block and so on. But it also means that I'm much more likely to, if I don't really know about design and so on and web page layout, I have much more freedom to make a mess. Whereas previously with this in the classic editor, as I said, if I make a change on the page, well, then all the other elements on the page move around as well. Whereas here, like technically I could just load everything up one on top of the other, and obviously you're not going to do that, but the freedom also gives us the freedom to make mistakes, shall I say. Anyway, but overall I think it's great. As a designer, I love the freedom it gives me for layout and so on. But I just thought it'd be cool to show you what it can do. Now the other so there are other features, like I can now drag this and make my image full screen, which is pretty cool. Whereas previously, if we wanted to have a split screen with maybe text on one side and an image on the other, we'd have to use custom code for that. So now we can make things full screen a lot more easily. Now, another thing I want to show you is if I go, so I've clicked out of these two blocks now, and I'm just in the section editor up here. If I click on that, I can make the gap between the grid elements smaller if I want, so that closes up the gap. Or you can make gaps bigger if that's helpful, or reduce them altogether. Same with the height between your grid elements. So you have a bit of flexibility with your grid. You can also add rows to your section like this, and you can see that as I add them, my section gets deeper or longer, if you like. And then I can also use this little blue button here to make my sections bigger or smaller, depending on my content. Now, if I add content, if I go up here to add block and I add a new gallery, for example, and I drag that below my image and my text block, it will automatically make the section longer to fit that. But then I can make it smaller if I want. Obviously here this is allowing for 4, 6, 8 images. But if I only have 3 images in my gallery, obviously it's not going to be as deep. And there are other nifty things you'll see with each block editor button. You can make your text sit in the middle of the block. If you do have overlapping blocks, you can use this to send things forward or backwards, and so on. So there's a lot you can play around with. Now, once you've upgraded a section to the Fluid Engine editor, you can't undo that. I'll just make that a bit smaller. You can't undo the upgrade, if you like. Once you've done that, you can't undo it. But as I say, your existing page sections, if you don't click on upgrade, they won't upgrade. You'll stay with your classic editor, and you can create your page sections as you wish. Going back to Fluid Engine, another major new addition to the Fluid Engine editor is the ability to edit specifically for mobile. So you've always had this mobile view, the top right-hand corner of your page. But if I click into that now, I will get the mobile view of my entire website, my entire web page. But this section in the middle where and the pink section where I upgraded to the Fluid Engine, if I go in here to, am I in edit mode? Yes, I am in edit mode. So if I look at this now, so it looks okay. I've got my image, I've got my text, and I've got my button. But I can again move things around here independently of the desktop layout. Now, if I change any text, or if I change the image, upload a different image, we will see that image on the desktop view as well. But with the mobile editor, you get to move the content around in such a way that it looks best on mobile without it affecting the desktop layout. So just because I've moved this button up here, or if I want to sit it over the image, if I go back to my desktop view, you'll see that things stayed exactly as they were when I was working on it in desktop. So you have this separate mobile view, which is fantastic, because previously, certainly designers, we were using quite a bit of code to make things look good on mobile. Now you can edit your sections independently from mobile. And again, you can make sections longer if you need to, if you need a bit more space. The only thing to bear in mind is that if you build a section using the desktop view, when you go into mobile, it will show you all the elements in the order that you added them to the section. So if you started by creating a button, and then you created your text, and then you added an image, well, when you come into mobile view, you will see the elements in the order in which you added them to the section in desktop. So that can be a little bit confusing. It just means that you need to reorganize things when you go into mobile view. So like let me just make that section smaller. If I add a new section, now all these sections, when I create a new section, I will automatically be offered sections using the Fluid Engine editor. That's just the sort of de facto editor from now on. If you want to create a new section using your classic editor, you can still do that down here. But I'm just going to add a blank section. So this will be a Fluid Engine section. And I can see that because I have this add block up here. Let me just change the background color so we can, it looks different to the one that won't be looked before. So if I add a block and I say add an image block first, put that in the middle, choose an image, just give that a second to load. So let's say, well, I'm going to make that a bit bigger. And you can also make that in design here, you can make that, search that to fill, or you can give it a shape if you want. So there's your image, and say then I add a button. So maybe add my button below that. It's a little bit trickier to center. I need to rearrange my grid. I need to close up my grid so that I can center that properly. Or maybe it's that's not centered. See, it is a little bit fiddly, and it wasn't fiddly with the previous editor, but anyway, everything is a little bit off center, so I actually need to fix my grid. But anyway, the purpose of this is I want to show you what happens when you add your content kind of, you add it in a way that you want it on your desktop. What will I add? I'll add, well, let's say I'm going to add a form. Let's say I'm going to put my form over here. Okay, so this doesn't look great, but let's just say we have a button. So I've got my image, I've got my button, and then I have a form. And now I'm going to drag that up because it's taking up too much space. And so let's say I'm happy with that on desktop, and then I go to mobile view. So I will see everything in the order that I added it to the page. So in this instance, that's not a very good example because you wouldn't typically have a form and then a button, but you might, a separate button. It's usually you just have your submit button. But if I wanted the form to come first, let's say on mobile, well, then I'd have to kind of drag that up. I'd have to kind of play around with it, bring my button down the bottom of the page, drag my image down the bottom, and then click and drag my form up. So, I mean, it's easy to do. It's just you need to check this every time in mobile. So it's added quite a bit of development time to the sites. Now, there's a question as to whether Squarespace designers are going to start increasing their rates, because we now have to basically double check. I mean, we always double checked everything for mobile, but now we sort of really, get to move things around, and probably will be moving things around in the mobile editor. So it will definitely add to development time. But anyway, I just wanted to show that to you. You'll see it yourself. If you do create a page or a section, when you go into mobile view, it doesn't always look the way you want it to. And that's just because it will just stack the elements in the order in which you added them to the page or to the page section. So that is a brief overview of Fluid Engine. Now, if all of this is kind of scary and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to have it know anything, my site looks great, I don't want to change anything other than add a blog every now and then, or hopefully add a blog regularly. It's important to know that not all pages are affected by Fluid Engine for the moment. It's only pages that have sections like these pages here. So blog posts are not affected. Event descriptions are not affected, and product additional info sections of your products, if you're selling products through your website, they are not affected by Fluid Engine. So as I say, if you're adding blog posts to your 7.1 website, this is not going to affect you. You can continue to create your blog posts as you've done to date, or as I've shown you. If you are playing around with your site yourself, or adding new pages yourself without going to your designer, you will be, as I say, any brand new pages will automatically be in Fluid Engine. Although, as I said, you can choose, if you go to page layout, you can choose the classic editor down here in the bottom, and then it still offers you page layouts, but they're using the classic editor. Otherwise, these ones here are all using Fluid Engine, so it's kind of hard to avoid it. I think that's probably enough for now. I hope you find this helpful. I'm considering doing a live webinar on Fluid Engine, where I can maybe answer some of your questions. If that's of interest to you, maybe you could drop a comment below here on YouTube, or if you're looking at this through my newsletter, just maybe reply to me, send me an email back, just saying yes, you'd be interested. If you would like me to do a webinar on Fluid Engine, and where I can answer your questions. I think that's it. So I hope you find that useful, and I hope you're still loving your website and loving Squarespace. This is a big change, but they are improving things and modifying things, because there were a few bugs in the early weeks, but they're working on this all the time on Squarespace. And as I said earlier, it does give us great freedom in terms of layout and so on. So I actually think it's an improvement to the platform. Thanks for watching. Bye.